guide me if you'll be so kind. Staring out into space, asking God to heal my case. Trying to think of all things past. How long will my memory last? The purple angel, purple angel, purple angel, you're next to me.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I am the host of your show, Lori LeBay, and I am also the founder of Alzheimer Speaks. My own mother had dementia for 30 years, and boy, if that wasn't life-changing, I don't know what is. But before we get started with the show, I just want to say I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season, engaged with friends and family, and kick off this new year to a really bright, blessed times. I know there are many people out there on this dementia journey, and many who don't have anything to do with it at all, that are also struggling. And this is a time of loss and reflection and many times loneliness. So if we can just all remember to be kind and reach out to those who might need us at this time, and let them know what a blessing they are in our life. I think that helps all of us. For those of you that are new to the show, basically Alzheimer Speaks is a is a group where we focus on shifting our dementia care culture from crisis to comfort around the world. And we do that by having authentic conversations with people all around the world at all levels who are in the midst of this journey or who have been on this journey. Some are diagnosed, some are family members, some are business professionals, singers, songwriters, researchers, advocates, you name it. Everyone's voice is welcomed here. So if you're ready to share a story or a concept that you're working on, or maybe you've implemented that you think others might be intrigued about regarding dementia and caregiving, please reach out to me at alzheimerspeaks.com. There's a big contact button up there. I would love to chat with you. I also help companies expand their brand footprint by leveraging our content to increase access to their products, services, and tools. So if you happen to be a company that has a service, product, or tool that you want to get out into the realm of dementia, please reach out to me as well. Now, before I introduce our guest today, who we're going to have a fun conversation talking about his personal experience with his mother's dementia, I want to give a shout out to Stall Catchers, which is a game we can all play. It's a video game that allows us to analyze real Alzheimer's data. And by doing that, we are pushing the needle just really forward. And you don't have to worry if you're right or wrong, because they can figure all that stuff out. But it's this group analysis by just kind of the average Joes like us, kids 6 to adults 96 are playing this game. There are challenges in schools and libraries all around the world, country to country even. So check out stallcatchers.com. And if you aren't familiar with memory cafes, I would really recommend that you look them up or go to Alzheimer Speaks to our initiatives and projects page. You can learn a little more there. But briefly, these are groups that pull people with dementia and their care partners together to build and give them a safe place and a new peer setting that understands what their life is like, and there's no apologies needed. We do a lot of laughing, have a lot of fun, and there's over 800 of them now in our country, thanks to the UK and others sharing this concept with us. You can go to, again, alzheimerspeaks.com to our projects and initiatives page, or you can go directly to memorycafedirectory.com. There you'll find a listing of all the memory cafes, and maybe you have a memory cafe, but you didn't know about the directory. Go to Memory Cafe Directory and just ask Dave to list you. It's free. Last, I want to give a shout out to an author by the name of Keith Gallus, who spent more than 20 years helping families work through all the questions that keep popping up on this dementia journey. And he wrote this book called Parental Dementia, and it's a guide through all those difficult questions. If you go to his site, parentaldementia.com, and order the book, you can put in the code Lori, Lori, and you'll save $5.99. That's a great way to kick off the new year. And I know the holiday season, people go, well, it's over, but it's a new year, and there are people who are always in need of information 24/7. So don't let that stop you. Go to parentaldementia.com and check out his book. Now, let me introduce our guest today. I am so honored to have Dr. Norris Roberts with us. He is an accomplished professional with more than 30 years of experience in the information technology and education arena. In 2008, Dr. Roberts learned that his mother suffered from Alzheimer's disease, and the resulting grief led him to start writing his thoughts down to help others along with himself in terms of processing this new entity that had come into his life. Those thoughts became a book, Mama is Still Here, which is an inspirational tribute to his mother and a guide for those who may find themselves in a similar situation. Dr. Norris Roberts lives in St. Louis, Missouri, and he is joined by his beautiful wife and one jealous dog. So welcome, Dr. Roberts. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Your story is like so many others out there, yet each of ours is unique and different. And I love when people decide to be brave and courageous enough to share their journey with the rest of the world. So thank you for writing this book. I want to first start out maybe just asking you a little bit, if you can set up, when your mom was diagnosed, what were people noticing, and how long did the journey last?
Yeah, my mom, she started exhibiting symptoms as early as 57, according to my dad. She got diagnosed in 2008 when she was 65 years old. And at that time, that's when my dad decided to retire because he realized that, something was wrong and that he had to figure out, what needs to be done. And so we learned that she had Alzheimer's. And so some of the things that I can share with you that I started to notice before the diagnosis is like every Sunday my mother cooked this big spread, this big dinner every Sunday after we got out of church. And so my family, my wife and my two kids, and we would always go over there and have dinner with my parents. And so this one particular day, my mother, she started wanting to eat dinner at the dining room table. And she would invite other extended family members to come and eat with us on Sundays. So this one particular time she asked me to get the cornbread out of the oven. So I went to the oven to get the cornbread, but I noticed the oven wasn't on. And so I said, Mama, the oven's not even on. There's no cornbread in there. Then she said, oh, I forgot to make it. And she said, since you're in the kitchen, bring the sweet tea to the table. So I go on the refrigerator. I go to the refrigerator, and then I find the cornbread that wasn't cooked in the refrigerator, and then along with the sweet tea. And so that was one thing. And the other thing we started to experience is that the food just wasn't tasting like it normally did. She would mix different seasonings that didn't go together. And so the food became very interesting. Some other things that I can speak about. I remember I was really pressuring her about, I think, what's going on with you. And so I went to the house one day without the kids by myself. And when I went to my parents' house, I know she was in the kitchen, and she had took all her seasonings out on the kitchen table, and she was labeling them like with sticky notes. And so
Mhm.
I said, Mom, what you doing? She said, I'm organizing all my seasonings. And so I became more disturbed when I saw her put a sticky note on salt and a sticky note on pepper because it already had its name already on it, salt and pepper. Like most of the seasons do anyway, but that was the most common seasoning is, salt and pepper. So, I mean, she was putting sticky notes on everything. And so when I started to ask her about that and pressuring her about, what her challenges are, then the next time I came to the house, all the sticky notes were gone. So she did her best to hide her having the disease from all of us. Because anytime you try to put pressure on her about, what's going on with her memory problems, then she'll just make a joke and get everybody laughing, and that'll distract you from asking more questions. So she did a lot of that, and another thing she was doing in addition to that was she started to request my kids. I got two kids; they're twins, and they were probably maybe adolescent or teenagers at the time. And she would always want them to come over to stay the weekend with her. And the reason she was doing that was because she wanted to keep her independence, and so she would have them help her guide her through town. Like so, when she go to the store, they can help her get back home. And she was bribing them not to tell anybody that she was struggling, how to get back home and stuff. And so she was using it like her little human devices to get back and forth from home to the store or the mall or wherever she wanted to go because she liked really liked to shop. And then she always bribed them with buying them stuff. So they enjoyed that piece of it. But those are the kind of things we start to notice. And I think the thing that probably broke the camel's back was my mom started having car accidents. And so she had numerous car accidents. And it was never her fault, but it was just interesting. She never had accidents in the past, and she just started to have all these series of car accidents. And most of the time, she would just get rear-ended. And so what my thinking is that she would just stop in the middle of the road, and somebody probably rear-ended her. And that's how she how the accidents occurred. So those are some of the things, but it was just many different things, as she progressed through the disease until we got a diagnosis. But it just got to a point we just said, my dad just said, there's something wrong. And the thing about it, I said this before I stopped talking about it, but it was like she had memory lapses. They weren't like all the time. They may happen like once a month initially. Then what happens, it became like once a week. And then it became like once a day. And it seems like it just they just became more and more frequent within a shorter space of time. And so when it got to the point where she was having them every day, that is when we took her my dad took her to the doctor, and that's when we got her diagnosis.
Okay. Sounds like there's a lot of similarities with my own mother. She started having symptoms in her mid 50s, didn't get fully diagnosed till about 65. They kept telling her it was hormones and stuff, and the cooking issues and just different things. So thank you for sharing that. Why did you decide to write this book, Norris?
Well, initially, really, to be honest with you, it was a book I really never wanted to write. Be honest with you, because it's about what it is about my mother's having Alzheimer's. But the reason I started to write this book was I was in at the time I was in at the time my mom was having this diagnosis. I had started my doctoral studies, and I finished my doctoral studies like in 3 years. It was like really amazing. It take most people like 5 years to do it. I got it done in 3. And so when I got it done, my professor at the college, she said, Nora, she talked about your mother all the time. You should write a book about it. And that's really what got me started to write about it because she just said, you are a very good storyteller. You need to write about what's happening with your mom. And I said, I don't know how to do that because that's not academic writing. That's a different type of writing. And she just said to me, she said, you'll figure it out. And so I just took a stab and I started writing about it. And a part of it, I wanted to just try to the way I figure out things is I write about it. And so it helped me to analyze things that she was going through. And, I really hadn't decided on like writing a book to publish it, but I started writing down things that were happening so I could just process and understand what was happening with her. One of the things in particular I can talk about is that the really was a challenge to me was she did not recognize her reflection in the mirror. And so when she did not recognize her reflection in the mirror, I didn't understand it. And so I started doing research on it. And what I started learning about how memory works. And so when I learned how memory started to work, I realized that the first thing to go with Alzheimer's is your memory retention. It's your short-term memory. And so all memory starts in your short-term memory and then it gets transitioned into your long-term memory. So I started to learn things like that by writing. And so when I started to write those things down, I said maybe do other people know these same things that I didn't know about? And that's when I started to really take that whole project more serious and say I need to write this in a way that I can share with other people. And the other thing I wanted to acknowledge is that I've always, the other part of it was that when I read other books, like other Alzheimer's stories, and I was doing research on them, they never really addressed the spiritual aspect of our existence. Everybody always talked about, what about the mind, the body, but they never talk about the spiritual aspect. And so I said, we are triune beings. We consist of mind, body, and spirit. And then I'm a Christian. And I said that the way I got through a lot of this is really through prayer and reading Bible scriptures. And so that's why I decided to include the scriptures and the prayers in the book, because that's what helped me get through a lot of the challenges and struggles I had with my mom. And so people that read my book, a lot of times when I'm having a challenge with my mother, the very first thing I'll do is I always pray. And I pray, and it always seemed to turn out better when I prayed. So I'm not sure I answered your question.
No,
that's kind of
that's nice. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I just had and that's why I just when you read my story, Mama's Still Here. I'm probably jumping the gun. We probably asking this other question, but that's why I structure the book where I structure it, because I always have an inspirational quote before I tell my story. Then once I go and then I tell the story I'm going to tell, then I always conclude the story with a scripture. I identify being scripture help, and I always have a prayer. And I always pray for the caregiver and the sufferer, and in my prayers, because I always felt like the caregiver and the sufferer are as one, and you can't talk about the sufferer without talking about the caregiver, and so that's why I always include both of them in the prayers. But my dad was a primary caregiver I would say in the earlier stages of my mother's decline, and I became the caregiver to them both as a disease, as my dad health started to decline. Because my dad was like a chronic diabetic, and so the things that he started to experience was he would have these low sugar episodes, and these low sugar episodes they became dangerous. He had several of them, and the fortunate thing about it, the blessing behind it, is that I was there for everyone he had. And so, with the exception of one, I wasn't there. My mom was there, and it's a story in my book called 911, where my mother, where she, my dad had a low sugar episode while they were out at the restaurant. It's called Captain D's, getting some lunch, and somehow my mother, she and I drove a car like in 3 years, and somehow she was able to drive my dad back to their house, call my aunt, and call 911. And when then my aunt called me, because I was on like a few minutes away. 'Cause I was at work. This when she first, in the very early stages of her disease. So I got there the same time the ambulance got there, and my mother was like back to her old self. She was like telling them about all my dad's medicines he take, and telling him that's talking like she was just normal, like she didn't have Alzheimer's. And it was shocking. I was just like wondering, like, does she really have the Alzheimer's, or is she misdiagnosed? Because she was like her old self. But then it only lasted for maybe 45 minutes. Then after 45 minutes, she just went back to the way she was before.
Wow.
And so I don't know. It's just, if you had told me that, and I wasn't a witness to, I'd be like, I'm not sure I believe that. But I was there. And I was confused, but at the same time, I was very, very happy. It was just so refreshing to see her as her old self. But that's kind of how her Alzheimer's was. She would just have moments when she just completely lucid. And then she had these moments when she just, it'll be there for sometimes it's a pretty good while, and other times it wasn't. But but that one time, and that one story I shared in the book called 911, she was completely there. Because this was my dad. What my dad would do. My dad was an excellent caregiver. I give him A plus. And the reason I said, because he would take my mom to the track every day. They'd walk the track every day, and so he was always trying to make sure that she was eating right, that she was exercising. He did not. Sometimes people just hide their loved ones when they had that disease. No, we kept going out to dinner. We kept socializing her. We never stopped doing the things we did before she got diagnosed. We kept doing those things until she couldn't do them anymore. And so we continued, to go, and then we couldn't. My mother didn't do Sunday dinners anymore, so what we would do instead, either my wife, she would cook, or we would go out to dinner like at some restaurant. And the thing it was interesting sometimes. Because my mom, she lost the ability to read, so she couldn't read the menu anymore. And so her favorite go-to food to eat was always shrimp. It was easy to eat, and she knew it. She didn't have to navigate any kind of utensil like a knife or a fork. And she always asked for either shrimp or French fries. It was like finger foods for her. But I remember this one time I shared with you is that we was at this one restaurant. It was in Illinois called Lala Creek. It's a kind of like an Applebee's type restaurant, but it's kind of a local restaurant, local to St. Louis area. And we had finished eating, and my mom, she got up. She wanted to walk around the restaurant. It's a huge restaurant. And so I got up and walked around with her 'cause I always follow her and make sure she don't get into any kind of trouble or anything. And she just walked around and she just sat down at this one couple's table and just started talking to them. And this one couple, they embraced her. They didn't like shoo her away. They just, you know, said, "Come on, have a seat with us." And she sat down with them, and she just started just talking about whatever, and they were listening, and what I thought was an amazing piece about it is that it's like she knew who were the right people to sit down next to, because the lady she was talking with was a caregiver for Alzheimer dementia in their homes. And
Wow.
so she knew, so she kind of just knew, she recognized my mom had Alzheimer's. And, but the thing is, my mom, she chose to sit with this couple. And then my wife, she asked the question, "Do you guys know them?" And I said, "No, we don't know them. I never saw them before in my life." But it was just like it was just. That's why I always say that my mother's spiritual awareness had heightened with that disease. It almost just seems like in her spirit, she knew who to connect with and who not to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about in my book, Mama's Still Here, I talk about how this is what I believe. I believe that as my mother mind declined and her body declined with the disease, it seems like her spiritual awareness had heightened. And so what her mind and body couldn't do, her spirit compensated for it. So when she couldn't figure things out logically like she normally did, it just seems like that spiritual piece of her it rised up, and it kind of helped her navigate through that disease. And I just kind of saw that as she progressed through the disease. I remember one time I was I was combing my mother's hair, and so I was just combing her hair, and I was just she was just taking a bath, and I was combing her hair, and I was just talking to her like I'm talking to you right now, and I was just sharing with her like some difficulties I was having, that they were just having in life. And as I was just talking to her, but the thing I want to note is that I haven't heard my mother speak in more than 6 months. I mean, she had not even said any words, and I'm there almost every day. And so it's one particular time I'm just talking to her, and then my mother just gets up and embraces me and whispers in my ear and say, "It's going to be okay." And I could have just fell out of, I just could have just fell to the floor at that point. I think at that moment a tear dropped out of my eye, because what that told me is that she heard me. She understood what I was saying, and she responded. And you can't tell me that she wasn't, sometimes it was other extended family members were saying, "Oh, that she's not here anymore, she's gone." And it's like, no, she hears everything you're saying. She just cannot respond to it like she did when she was well. But don't be mistaken in thinking that she doesn't understand. But
Yeah.
in that
Those,
moment, she was able to understand
those
and
moments of
let me know.
clarity. Yeah, those moments of clarity are so rich and so wonderful. And like you said, they're just shocking. That happened several times with me. And my mom journeyed this path for 30 years. And I remember one time just breaking down and I bawled for 2 hours. I just bawled and she went back to sleep and I just kind of rubbed her tummy and I cried and cried and cried because my mom hadn't said my name in 3 years. And all of a sudden I heard it. And it was just, it's just overwhelming. And it gives you, I think, this new feeling of connection and unconditional love and just this hope and this kind of inner knowing that no matter what happens, we're still connected. It might not look the same as it did before, but the connections are still very, very deep and strong. And to me, the journey was almost like a religious experience because it's so hard to put into words when you have those poignant moments of connection, or even just, I don't know if you felt this way, but when you were talking about sitting with your mom and brushing her hair and, kind of the silence and, you're like, I would do kind of a similar thing in terms of talking with my mom. And there was a little piece of me that said, am I just talking to myself or does she really understand? But I came to realize she was like the safest place in the world to go because she was always open to whatever was going on in my life and whoever I showed up as without judgment. And that was such a safe, beautiful place to be. For me, it was anyways. And then to know that she was taking it in and that she could communicate back, maybe not in the depth that she used to, but I didn't necessarily need that depth. Because those few short words, that connection was enough to lift me. Did you have that feeling at all, that sense with your mom?
Yeah, I did. My mother and I, we had a very close relationship. Before she acquired that disease, and so we had like an amazing, son and mother relationship. And so I really, she was my confidant. She was, I loved her to death. I had a very close relationship with her, and she was very much a part of my life. And so when she, got this disease, Alzheimer, I remember, I tell you this one story that happened. I had this one chapter in a book called You Belong to Me. And I talk about what happened with my mom, but I was at my parents' house, and I had just walked in the house, and my parents back in the bedroom. And my mother and father were like, they were back in the bedroom they were having a good time together. They were laughing and seemed to be talking. And my dad, when I came in the bedroom, he said, my mom's name is Daisy. And he asked, Daisy, do you know who that is? And my mother said, I can't call your name, but I know you belong to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then she looked at me and she said, always know that I know you belong to me.
Mm.
And so when she said that, it just, what it did for me, it let me know that it was okay that she didn't call my name anymore. And I was okay with it. Because what happened, my mother started calling me. She always said that I reminded her of her younger brother, Howard. And so as she progressed in the disease, I became her Howard.
Mm-hmm.
So she always, so she did. So that right there let me know that that connection that she always said I had to her uncle, her brother Howard, which is my uncle, that she may not can call my name, but the name she can call is his. And when she called his name, it's like calling my name. And so that's what helped me. Because one of the hardest things, I think, especially as a son, is your mother not being able to call your name. But I think in that disease, sometimes sometimes she was that mom that I knew when I was a kid. That knew my name. Then there was times when she was that 20-some-year-old that was before I was born, and then she was that little girl that again was that person before I came into existence. And so sometimes, as she wandered in her memories, depending on where she was at, sometimes I'm me, Norris. Well, she called me Junior. Then other times I'm Howard. But then, because one time I remember there's one story in the book called "Sometimes I Have to Cry," where she had this crying spell, and my dad could not get her to stop crying. She cried for like hours, I think. And so he called me on the cell phone, and I was in the area, and I came by. When I got there, I mean, he was just he was on his last leg. He was like, I can't take it anymore, and so I told him to leave, and I'll take care of Mama. And so what I did at that moment, after my dad had left, I took my mother to the kitchen table where she always shared all these stories about her childhood with me at the kitchen table. I set her at her seat at 7 o'clock. I sat at 2 o'clock at the table. And I reached across the table and held both her hands. And I just started telling her stories about her when she was a little girl. Because when I came in the house, after my dad had left, I went to the family room. The first thing she said to me was, please take me home. She called me Howard and asked me to take her home to her mama and daddy. And so the way I took her home to her mama and daddy is I took her to the kitchen table and I held her hands and I started telling her stories about her childhood in Mississippi and the things that she did when she was like a little girl. And when I started to do that, she seemed to she stopped crying. And then she started to ask me to tell her more stories and tell her more stories. And so then she got to a point after I told so many stories about her childhood to her, she called me by my name. And she called my dad by his name. So I just learned I don't know how to explain, but I just learned over time how to bring her back, if I could. And that's how I did.
And it sounds like what you did was you what they call lived in her world, wherever she was at, whatever age. I'm thinking I need my older brother to listen to this interview because, you were explaining when your mom didn't recognize you, but she said, I'll always know you. You'll always be mine. And my older brother still struggles with that to this day. My mom's been gone since 2014, but she lived with the disease for 30 years. And for many, many years, she didn't know Mark's name. And she would call my brother Mark, her brother, Chuck. And he would be, I remember he was 50 years old at the time, and he said, doesn't that just tick you off? She calls you Grandma, and she calls me Chuck. And I said, Mark, she's gone back in time. I mean, exactly what you figured out. She's gone back in time before she was married, before she had kids. And, she loves this person. This isn't a put down. This is an honor to be called Uncle Chuck. She loves Uncle Chuck. She feels safe with Uncle Chuck. And then I kind of giggled and said, look in the mirror. You look like Uncle Chuck when he was your age, And so it all made sense, but I don't think he's ever really accepted that. So I'm going to have him, I think, listen to this show because maybe hearing it from another man who's gone through a similar situation will help him. And I think so many of the stories that you've shared, so many of us have gone through. and you put it in a different light, and teaching people to live what I term graciously alongside the disease. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because I think this is a real common thing that many go through, is we hear a lot of abandonment of friends and even family members who don't feel comfortable visiting anymore. Did your family experience that? Did your mom in particular lose friends on this journey?
Yeah, she did. And my mom, she kind of spoke it out early on. Her thing was that that's why she didn't want to share her diagnosis with people, because she always said that fear would get in the way. And when she would say that, I didn't know what she really meant at the time. But it's a lot of things that she said through the years. I didn't know what they meant until many years later. I just kind of pinned that moment. But yeah, it divided our families basically. I mean, I don't know how it did a job in our family. So people, as she progressed through the disease, initially people would come around. Then as she progressed through it, then they just started falling off, and so people wouldn't come by anymore. She had siblings that they just. I mean, she had siblings that never came to her. They didn't even come to her funeral. And so it was like she was just forgotten. And it was sad for me because it was something I did not expect. And so, and because I was connected to her, what was happening, I was also being disconnected from other extended family members. And the thing, when I say I have a lot. My mom had a lot of extended family. It's 11 of them. She has 8 brothers and she has 2 sisters. And so me growing up, I grew up in I was born in Mississippi and I was raised in St. Louis, Missouri. And my mom was a school teacher. And so because she was a school teacher, she always had those breaks. And so during those breaks, like summer break, spring break, winter break, we always went to Mississippi. And so I saw my extended family often. My first cousins were like my siblings. I got first cousins that I saw every week that lived locally. So when my mom got sick with Alzheimer's, I had to grieve some of those relationships because they just stopped coming around. And so it was hard, and the reason it was hard is because of I'm grieving my mother as she declines further and further into the disease. But then in addition to that, I have to grieve those relationships of family that I was used to being connected to from childhood. I had to grieve those as well because they found it too uncomfortable for them to come by or to see her. Some of them would say things like, we want to remember her as she once was and not as she is now. But my thing was like, she's still here. She's not gone. But, they didn't see it that way. They just didn't. And so I don't know. It was difficult. I can say it was difficult. And I've had to grieve some of those relationships. And they just, and the way it did, it changed me. It changed me to the point where I had to see people from my own eyes. 'Cause I think what was happening to me before my mom got Alzheimer's, I've always viewed a lot of my relatives from my mother's eyes. But then when she got this disease, Alzheimer's, I had to start to look at people from my own eyes, and it was I had to grieve that because it wasn't what I believed. Things had changed, and maybe I just thought things from, I was being too idealistic, or maybe I was just, this person that I want everybody to be happy and get along and just, and just move through this thing with us. But, everybody wasn't on board with that. They like, they're not going they're not going to be supportive to this whole disease. And my mother, she was like the favorite aunt, the favorite sister. I mean, she had all this swag and everybody loved her. And she gave so much love back to other people that it was difficult for me to even imagine that anyone not being there for her. But they weren't. And, people may say different. They may have a different, how can I say, they may think differently about it, but I was there. I know who was there. And they just chose not to be there. And so, but I think the thing I would leave people with is don't be. I used to get angry about it, and I stopped getting angry about it because of everyone is not equipped to walk this journey of Alzheimer's. And so, if they're not equipped and their heart's not in it, why force them?
Exactly.
So I rather just, I accepted. I had to accept that, and because everybody's not willing, or even have the, I don't know how you say it, but they're not wired to help to support a person at that capacity. And I guess maybe I just was, and it wasn't. I ain't gonna say it wasn't hard. I think what was hard about it is just having to grieve so many different things. But I'm a giver by nature, and my wife's a giver, which really helped a lot. And so it wasn't that big of a deal. From that perspective, we just, one thing I would tell people, I think a lot of people don't realize, but the one thing I did not share in this book right here, I didn't share that I was a caregiver for like 3 people. Eventually it was my mom, my dad, and my father-in-law. My father-in-law lived with me. Because in 2008, the same year my mother got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, is the same year that my mother-in-law passed away with cancer, and she had like myeloma cancer. She died, and when she passed away, my father-in-law, he lived in Chicago with my mother-in-law, so he moved in with me and my wife because he couldn't financially take care of himself in Chicago, because she died at 61 years old, so she was young. And so he moved in with us, and shortly after he moved in with us, we learned that he had clogged arteries. So he had to get 5 bypasses replaced, 5 bypass surgery. And so that in itself, that was a difficult surgery, a difficult recovery, and he came out of it with a lot of issues. And so there was days where I had to take my parents, my dad to the doctor with my mother because she couldn't stay by herself. Then once I got done with that appointment, I had to go get my parents fed, so got them situated, got them lunch, And then once I got them situated, I had to race back home to pick up my father-in-law and take him to his appointment. And then I mean, it was like so I was on, and then I also had my kids were in college at the time, and so I was attending their needs as well. So sometimes I had to like travel, you know, they were staying on campus an hour or two away, a couple of hours away, so I had to go and tend to their needs and parent them that way. So I had a lot going on, and I was pretty much doing a lot of it by myself, along with my wife. But that's what we. But again, we just the way we feel about our parents, you just do what you have to do. I don't complain about it. You just do what you have to do, and you just. But the thing about it, I enjoy being with my parents, so I never saw it being a burden. I mean, that's what we, that's what we do on the weekends. We spend time with our parents, and that's what we did. And so, I mean, I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't even think, I can't remember a week not going by. When my mom was healthy. I can't recall a week I not saw my mother, even as an adult, because I was at her house at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. So being with them wasn't, I didn't, some people don't have that kind of relationship with their parents. That's what I had, that kind of relationship. And even when my mom had passed, me and my dad, we would have like daddy and father and son dates, I guess you could call them. We went out to eat a lot together. 'Cause my dad loved to eat, so he had his favorite restaurants he wanted to go to, and I would take him, or if he needed something, I was there. We just, and it wasn't a big deal. It just wasn't.
Yep. No, I get that because and you're right. There are some people who just aren't built to do the caregiving job, and if they don't want to be there or they're not comfortable doing those things, then the person they're caring for is not going to feel comfortable either. And I think every family kind of has a leader of the pack that's more comfortable than not with that, and it can divide families. We only have about 5-6 minutes left, but I wanted to ask you if your mom ever had any violent or angry episodes, because I know many deal with that. I know my mom didn't have a lot of them, but she could get aggressive verbally to people. How about your mom?
My mom, I actually got a story in my book called It's Just Your Imagination Run Away With You, the old Temptation song title. And my mother, she had a lot of them. The one person she never did fight was me. She would fight my dad, and she would fight other people. She never did fight me. And I think that brought some resentment to a lot of people as well. And I can't explain it, but for some reason, I was that one person that calmed her down. But there's one episode that happened with her. She was at my house. We had invited her sister and my uncle over, my aunt and my uncle over for dinner along with my parents. And then everything seemed to be just wonderful. Everybody, my mother, she seemed to be very calm, in a happy place. Then all of a sudden, she got angry with her sister, and which was our aunt. And she said, She said, you took something from me. I want it back now. And my aunt was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And my mother said that you know what I'm talking about. I want it back now. And so my wife was carving this ham with this knife. My mother she reached and got the knife from my wife. Just took it. And she started chasing my aunt through the house with this knife.
Oh, geez.
And so it was like a horror movie unfolding right in my house. And my aunt was screaming. She ran into like the pantry and closed the door, trying to get away from my mother. And I reached back. I reached for my mother, and I got the knife from her. And my mom, when she realized what she was doing, she just broke down and started crying. And so I just took her for a long walk around the neighborhood, and when I just try to just distract her from what was going on, just to calm her down. And she then we came back to the house to have dinner. Of course, everybody was rattled, and my dad, he was embarrassed. My aunt was upset still, but I was like, we cannot let this disease win. So let's everybody calm down and let's have dinner. And we had dinner, and she was okay after that. But I just think sometimes you just gotta just learn how to distract them from whatever that is that's happening. And I think a lot of times people just get so caught up in the moment, won't let it go, and then they just ruin the rest of the day. And you don't have to.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things people don't realize too is how terrified your mom had to be to grab a knife and be chasing somebody. She had to feel really threatened to do that, and yet we don't seem to think about that. You know, how scared they are, how frightened they are, how mad they are to do something like that. And I think you've dealt with your mom in a brilliant way in terms of distracting and reminiscing and just loving her, through the whole thing, supporting her wherever she's at and stepping into, people refer to it as their world, but I think it's our world, stepping into our new reality of how do we adapt to this? We've adapted to so many other things in life. Why is there such great pushback when it comes to dementia? I really do think it's a mindset and a heart set that needs to be changed. Well, I thank you so much for taking so much time with us today. This hour has just kind of blown by. Now, people can reach out to you. They can email you at Norris, Norris, at mamaisstillhere.com. That's Norris, Norris, at mamaisstillhere.com. Or you can always purchase the book from Amazon online. And that is, if I'm not mistaken, you've got a few different forms. You've got audio in Kindle and then book format. Is that correct?
Yes, it's in hardback format, paperback, ebook, audio. It's every format that you would like, that you prefer. So it's out there. And I really like the audio book version because what the producer did, every time he gets to the scripture and the scripture and prayer part of the chapter, he always played hymn music in the background. And so that's kind of a nice little addition to the audio book.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, and I wish you great success with your book. Mama is Still Here, and it sounds like you've just done an amazing job in the way you loved and cared for your mom and supported your dad through this journey. So again, thank you, Norris, for spending time with us today.
Oh, thank you. It was a blessing.
Wonderful. And to all of our listeners, I want to wish you the best as we roll into this new year of 2020. May you look back at the blessings that occurred in 2019. No matter what your struggles are, there are always still blessings there. So take a deeper look and look for them in case they're just not coming up front. But the people that surround you, the opportunities that may have come and gone, maybe didn't last as long, you still had them. And, focus on on the graciousness of the new life we've got to bear before us. Talk soon, everyone. Bye now.
Hi, everyone. This is Meredith from the Senior Fitness with Meredith podcast, where I discuss all things for seniors, from fitness, your health and wellness journeys, how to be all over strong and beyond. I also have my mini podcast called Motivation with Meredith. It's a great, quick motivational pick-me-up for your days. Join me, listen now, search for Senior Fitness with Meredith on your favorite podcast platform.